The Green Bay Packers are setting up for a huge draft. What do I mean by that? Before I get into it and break that all down, there's so much to go over and cover. So please listen to the video in its entirety. If you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button for me, that'd help me out immensely. So please hit that subscribe button. Okay, so the Packers setting themselves up for a huge draft. What do I mean by that? Not only do the Packers have 11 draft picks in this year's draft, 5 of them come in the top 100, which means that Gutekunst can trade up. If the player is not there, we know that Gutekunst loves building for the future. So we know that he could take this year's draft capital and build upon that for future draft capital. So we know sky's the limit when it comes to this year's draft. They also have a couple of players in their arsenal that could be great trade bait come draft day. And it could be building upon draft capital or even trading for some talent that is already in the NFL. I'm going to break that down for you guys. There's two names that I'm going to say, and I don't want you to tune me out when I say these two names. I want you to hear it out. I'm not suggesting the Packers should trade these guys. However, they would potentially make sense for the Packers to move on from them. One guy is Christian Watson. That is a dude that has just he's been plagued with injuries. We've seen his ceiling. The ceiling is off the charts. We know that when healthy, he is a fast and reliable target he was for Aaron Rodgers. He was for a couple of games for Jordan Love until he got hurt. But with those soft tissue issues there and those lingering hamstring issues, it makes you wonder, can this guy stay out on the football field? Of course, the Packers doing all the right stuff, trying to build, the right coaching staff around Christian Watson and players that have these types of injuries so that they can avoid them and so that they can keep these guys out on the football field. However, we're not privy to conversations that go on behind closed doors. So maybe Christian Watson is one of those guys that, Gutekunst has just been told, hey, man, I don't know if these hamstring issues are ever going to go with this guy. So if that's the case, he might make some great trade bait. He's also been linked per The Athletic and Bleacher Report, which are pretty decent and reliable sources, to a trade with Cincinnati for T. Higgins. T. Higgins is a reliable guy. He is a reliable target. He can be a highlight reel at times. He can stay out on the football field. So having somebody out there is better than having nobody out there when Christian Watson just isn't out there. And if you remember last year when he was out for so long, he came back. And of course, it takes a couple games to get your sea legs back. But those last couple of games in the playoffs, he literally was non-existent for the Packers. So again, having a guy like T. Higgins out there is a better target than no target. Another name out there would be Preston Smith, and I'm not suggesting that the Packers should trade Preston Smith. However, when you look historically at the Packers moving on from players at the right time, Devonta Adams was one of those guys, and you look at his career right now, he's not getting any younger, and he's in a really bad situation there with the Raiders. And then you look at Aaron Rodgers, the Packers moved on from him at the right time. Preston Smith might be one of those guys. Of course, he is coming off one of the best years of his career last season with the Packers. But they did go and draft a guy in Lucas Van Ness. Maybe they feel he's ready to take the reins. Maybe they feel he's ready to take over. So if that's the case, Preston Smith would not only free up money for the Packers, but he would also make some great trade bait and create some draft capital, whether this year or in future years for the Packers. So one of those guys in the draft that the Packers had been looking at is a defensive tackle out of Texas, Tavondre Sweat, a guy that I love, a guy that I think is the best run stuffer in this year's draft, hands down. Nobody's going to win that argument with me. This guy is going to be a run stuffing nightmare, and that is exactly what the Packers are looking to do. And his recent run-in with the law may have helped the Packers because teams are going to be overlooking him. The Packers might be able to get him with that second pick in the second round with Tavondre Sweat. He is an All-American. This dude has some wheels for his size. This guy is a beast. Okay, so his size is gonna be a problem for a lot of teams that might impact whether they draft him or not, because his weight and his conditioning could become an issue because again of his size. He's 368 pounds, 6'4.5". The guy is an animal. He's a beast, but you can't teach size. The guy just has it. He is NFL ready for his body. You can also teach character and discipline. You can teach those things. You cannot teach talent. This guy has got talent. He's got size. You can teach character. Guys make mistakes. DWI, of course, right before the draft, is just stupid for some players. Why do they get themselves into these positions? Um, who knows? But the Packers have got the right coaching staff around them to hopefully build on his character. So let's take a look at what Tavondre Sweat had to say about himself. He says, "Don't sleep on me because I'm a big guy. A lot of people are misinformed because I'm big. I move incredibly well for my size. They see 365 on the scale and it scares them. It has never scared me. I love that. Don't get scared because of the big number. A lot of people aren't used to that number. I understand that. I love to showcase what I can do with that size. I've been doing that in my entire life. I've always been the biggest kid on the playground. This is nothing new to me. It doesn't phase me. I love his confidence in his size. I think the Packers would do very well in drafting a guy like Tavondre Sweat. If you haven't seen some highlights of this dude, go and watch some highlights of this guy. He is a quarterback's nightmare because his eyes are always up. His eyes are always on the quarterback. He has had more batted down passes, I think, that I've ever seen of any player in college football. The guy's hands are always so active. He's not a great pass rusher. That's not what he's known for. He's known for stuffing the run. That's what he's known for. Um, so his eyes again are always up. He's taking on those double or triple teams, and then he's shedding the blocks and going and getting those tackles. He goes on to say right here, everybody wants a pass rusher. It's always been about the number of sacks on the stat sheet. How are you going to do that if you can't stop the run? You're going to have a long afternoon if you can't stop the run. I love what he had to say there. It just cracks me up because it's spot on. It's so right what he had to say. So another guy that the Packers, of course, would love to have out of Texas is a guy in Byron Murphy the second. This is a bad dude. He is so good. He's a junior out of Texas, another dude out of Texas, 6'1", 308 pounds. So his size is not quite there. I do feel he is going to go in the first round. But this dude he has strength and speed. He's a great 3-down player who brings a lot of abilities to run and pass defense. So this is a dude that, of course, the Packers would love to have. But honestly, I think if given the option, I would rather have Sweat because I really want the Packers to stop the run. Another guy that you start looking at in this year's draft when we start talking about defensive tackles is a guy out of Michigan, senior Chris Jenkins. Jenkins is one of the strongest players in this entire draft. That's why I love him. But his arm length limits what he can do out there, and his lack of pass rush profile is going to limit his stock ability in this year's draft. So this would be a guy that, if he's available and the Packers haven't taken a tackle by that point, maybe this is a guy that the Packers move on later on in the draft. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think about Sweat in his recent run into the law. Does that scare you? Doesn't scare me. If anything, it motivates me because I think he'll be available for the Packers right when they need him. Leave your comments. Go Pack Go.